Thank you, Madam President. I rise to argue the germaneness of the amendment that we put forth today. This bill at hand deals with telehealth services, something that has significantly increased during the pandemic, largely because of many restrictions in our state as a result of the pandemic and result of executive orders and directives by our governor without involvement, consultation with, or approval of this legislative body. The amendment at hand, the hostile amendment at hand, will terminate the governor's emergency powers that will have been in effect for a full year in 2 days. We submit that the action taken just about 3 weeks ago by this legislature that purported to end the governor's emergency powers did no such thing. Every directive that the governor had in place the time we passed that legislation about 3 weeks ago remains in effect. At the time of arguing that legislation, because we on this side of the aisle do not believe that went far enough, particularly given the circumstances in this state and the multitude of scandals and investigations that the governor is operating under right now, that the legislature should be fully engaged in the operation of state government, and particularly in the oversight of Governor Cuomo's dictatorial control over everything related to things in his executive orders, of which there are some 60, I believe, remaining in place. At the time of that debate, it was suggested by the majority that we can simply change any of the governor's existing orders with a concurrent resolution of the Senate and the Assembly. We have since, from the Republican side, submitted a couple of resolutions as suggested by the majority. One, to eliminate the requirement that a customer buy food when they're ordering a beverage. Second, that the 11 p.m. curfew on the operation of bars and restaurants should be ended. These two by themselves represent just a couple that, in my opinion, and those of us on this side of the aisle, have no rational basis in either science or medicine. Therefore, no rational basis to limit and constrict the liberties, rights, and freedoms of the citizens of the state of New York. Law requires there to be a rational basis for any such limitations on liberty, rights, and freedoms. That's not the case with these two. Yet this body, the majority, refuses to continue to move those resolutions, even through committee, to get them to the floor on the active resolution calendar. So despite what the argument was 3 weeks ago, this majority is doing nothing. And nothing has changed on all of the edicts that the governor had issued and were existing at the time that that legislation was passed 3 weeks ago. The arbitrariness and capriciousness of these two issues is plain to see on its face. And there has been no suggestion by the executive of any scientific or medical basis for that. There's a pending lawsuit in Western New York that this Friday, about a month after an order to show cause was issued, in favor of about 100 bars and restaurants in Western New York and Senator Patrick Gallivan that the curfew had no basis and the judge threw it out. The state's response date is this Friday. So we're waiting on a ruling again from a court to tell this legislature what the law is in New York State. That's a delegation of our duty. That's sitting back and letting court make decisions that the legislature should be involved with the oversight of the legislature, the oversight of the governor. Nothing changed with the bill that was passed 3 weeks ago. Yet, even this week, the governor came out regarding the curfew and said he's going to lift the 11 p.m. curfew. It's the governor's own prerogative, because he's still got the final say with the ultimate authority, without any involvement from us in the legislature, that gyms, pool halls, theaters, and bowling alleys don't have to abide by the 11 p.m. curfew anymore. What is the scientific or medical rationale to lift a curfew for those types of venues, but not restaurants or bars? I submit that there absolutely is none. And it is senseless policies like this that are making our economy even harder to rebound from this pandemic and stifling small businesses in the state of New York. And I know that there are those on the other side of the aisle, in the majority here, that have similar feelings and concerns on these issues. And our freshman senator, John Mannion, sent a letter to the governor this week asking that the curfew for Central New York be lifted so that fans for the Syracuse Sweet 16 game this weekend don't have to go home at halftime. Well, I would submit they're not going to be going home at halftime because they're not going to be going out in the first place and patronizing small businesses. The governor didn't do it for Buffalo Bills playoff games in Western New York, yet there's court action pending that says this curfew is baseless and should not continue. And I'm not arguing that we should make exceptions for college basketball games or professional football games just because they're important games. But it should be statewide. And we should have a standard in this state that applies to everyone, not just 100 bars and restaurants in Western New York that happen to be the lucky plaintiffs in a case, and they've been able to be open now for a month, past 11. That must end. Further, in light of the new findings of the CDC, based on the Massachusetts study, that students can safely be in a classroom with 3-foot separation, and the CDC agreeing with that, that is the major limiting factor at this point in our schools, getting back to full-time, in-person students in the classroom where they should be, and stop the continuing of falling behind because of the way the education system is running right now. The science is suggesting that 3 feet is safe, but our schools, even some counties, are going ahead without the 6-foot rule in violation of the governor's edict of 6-foot requirement in schools. We as a legislature should be dealing with these types of issues and not sitting back and leaving it up to the governor. The American Association of Pediatricians agrees with our position and that position of the CDC and the findings of that Massachusetts study. We need our students in the classroom. We need them in the classroom as soon as possible. The only thing hindering that in most of our school districts is this 6-foot rule, when all health studies indicate at this point 3 feet is safe and reasonable and should be pursued. So, based on that and these considerations, Madam President, I believe that the ruling of the chair should be overruled, that this amendment should be ruled germane, and that this legislature should get back in the business of oversight of an out-of-control executive. Thank you, Madam President.